I think it's important to have really dynamic understandings around systems, understanding how systems work, understanding that these small parts within my system create the whole picture, how important like communication is and healthy communication, and if I don't have healthy communication within my program, what is the ripple effect of that and how that will end up impacting my system. Being able to build intelligence from that, having a firm knowledge and understanding of evidence-based practices, being able to articulate why do we do what we do and how do we know it works, relying on professional wisdom and insight, thinking about the most reliable, conscientious research that's out there, and really taking into account the consumer, meaning the children and families. What are they bringing to help us to understand why we do what we do and how do we know it works?
In thinking about planning and implementing a program that supports the development of children in all areas, we want to be sure we're looking at what's really developmentally appropriate and the key elements of that. What's age appropriate for the children, the ages of the children enrolled, our older toddlers, our preschoolers that are 3, and our children who are pre-K age and going to enter kindergarten. I think we want to be sure that we spend time with families understanding children's interests and what engages them.
El piso o el techo?
How do you know this? El techo.
One of the ways we secure information about families is by asking them directly.
Okay, so we'll take these books out. And this is Dad. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Esther. I'm the clerk here. Nice to have you. Hola, señora, ¿cómo está? Fácil.
Teachers and providers are the first line of contact. Parents feel very comfortable with talking to the teachers and staff and asking them for either references or resources, and that's information we gather. But we also gather it directly by written format, and we'll say here are the different services we have available, what are some needs, and then we look at that data to drive our decision making and vision and where we continue to move forward.
It's been important for us as a staff to spend time each year, really throughout the year at different intervals, reflecting on the program's vision.
And then it's really paying attention on a regular, daily, weekly basis to the obstacles that present themselves and removing them. So being a gatekeeper so that they can get to the business of planning, they can get to the business of teaching, and then just checking in regularly to make sure that we've provided staff whatever materials they need to succeed. And if they need time to think or plan, that they're also provided that opportunity.
I know like he might not be ready to communicate it verbally, but he might do really well acting it out.
Great idea. So let's put it for the Spanish ELD.
When people begin to stray from the program model, if you notice in the first error or two or within a couple of days, then it's easier to understand. But when you let things go forever and ever, it's harder to get people back on track. So it's important to be timely and to be relational.
I was very fortunate when I stepped into my assignment to have a mentor. Someone who took me under her wing and shared her knowledge, but also asked me very reflective questions that got me to rethink, and sat me down and said, what's your vision? What's your strategic plan? And so I took that experience and replicated it here initially, and continuously with our staff look at how are we doing and how are we improving.
So being able to assess, evaluate, look at the information, and build intelligence from the information that you're receiving, and then to have the courage to create change when you need to create change.
So are you setting up something over here, or are you gonna?
We just thought we'd put the cars and some of the wooden toys out.
Reflective supervision can begin with the power of reflection. And sometimes people say, well, I don't have time for that. And one of the things I share is The moment you ask a question is the moment reflection begins. So even just thinking about the types of questions that we ask at staff meetings to begin that experience. So I may not have time within my scope yet to sit down on a one-to-one basis and engage each and every one of my staff members. I even have a hard time doing it in small group or dyad situations. We could just say, let's take a moment and think about what are those daily experiences that are part of the program.
As an administrator, when you're asking a staff member, how's it going? What things are working well for you with young children, and what are some areas that you would like to learn more about or do better at and be better at, so that when they're asking for that information to come from the teacher, it's just going to the teacher's level. She's articulating it. It's her interest in learning more about sciences with young children. And so, asking her to be concrete, some specifics, having a conversation around that, and then action steps. What is the next step for learning for you? How can I support you? What information or training, or can I partner you up with another teacher who's strong in this area?
And I also think administrators point out the strength of individual teachers, also important. Although you see some areas need to improve, but you still focus on the strength of individual teachers.
Another piece of the reflective process is, very often I see this a lot in beginning students, they focus on what they need to know or what they don't do well, and we have to remind them that part of the reflection is also, what are you doing well? And get them to really think about that. How do you do that? Why did you do it that way? And get them to maybe then be able to discuss that or share with others.
When I evaluate the assistants, I ask them each year to set a goal for themselves. And I'm looking at that goal of, how can I support that staff member in being able to achieve their goal? And I try to incorporate that in professional development as well. We also have agencies that we work with that staff are informed about their professional development that is outside of their work hours, and they are encouraged to attend those. So we're looking at where staff members are, supporting them, highlighting their strengths, and then helping them with some of their areas that they feel they need to work on. And that's how we support each other.
So an example that I give is thinking about, do you have consistent opportunities to engage with your staff? Do you have opportunities for them to collaborate with each other or to collaborate with you about an idea, a concept, a policy?
Another role that the administrator needs to play in supporting that professional development is also being open to hearing different ideas. If the administrator is kind of going down one path, but there's a group of staff that says, well, we really want to try this. We think this will work well with our group of children. Give them some support in trying that. Connect with them, have them reflect back with you on how that worked.
By trying new things, and just, again, the climate of inquiry. If you're thinking about, I'm wondering how this would work. I'd like to give this a try. Everybody has to be willing to put their heads together and then figure out what the appropriate approach would be for that to kind of roll out in your program.
I've even seen some centers that get really creative in their physical space and will post a question and people write answers as they come in for their breaks. It's not the face-to-face conversation, but at least they're having a conversation and trying to build that sense of community. But making time for that is critical and is, I think, one of our biggest challenges in our working environments.
It truly is about communicating. It's truly about taking risks and not looking at those risks as, if I fail, it's bad, or if it doesn't work, it's bad. It's okay. We're going to figure this out together. We don't all come in with the answers. I don't know all the answers. Staff members don't know all the answers. The special education teacher doesn't. The general education teacher doesn't. Let's work together to figure this out, how it works for us and how it benefits the children.
So every week we do come together and we ask, what are different issues that are rising or agenda items you need us to address.
And it's a process. I serve as what I call a mediator for staff. Sometimes I just have to start it out by saying, such and such came to me with a concern and she would like to talk to you about it. I'm here just to make sure you let her speak and then you get your chance to speak. She just asked me to be here so that I can support her in that process, but I am not going to participate in the conversation. The conversation is going to be between the two of you. Usually I have to do that once or twice with staff members and then they're able to do it on their own. So yes, we do step on each other's toes, but yes, staff are able to talk about it at an appropriate time and work together, and that's what makes them successful.
I often think about tools that can help early educators apply their practice consistently. And your point about dealing with difficult situations brings to mind the fact that if there are policies in place and applied consistently, so that early educators as a group in a specific setting understand that they're going to be applied consistently and fairly, that brings a level of respect and fairness.
It took communication. It took a little bit of practice and trial and error. How do we do this? What are our groups going to look like? When are we going to collaborate to talk about what we're providing the children so that we all know how to meet all the needs of the staff members, which is where the team meetings come in, and being able to provide opportunity for staff to meet, because that time is valuable and they do need to meet to be able to discuss how to meet children's needs so that they're successful and so that the children are successful. So it's collaboration, communication, trust, respect. That's what makes it successful.
Over the course of the year, we look at every aspect of our program, both in terms of administration and supervision and human resource development. We look in terms of finance, curriculum, social services, parent involvement, disability. We look at everything and see how they are connected. Where do we need to put our resources and where do we need to put our time? And then we go in the classroom and see is what's on the lesson plan is really reflective of what's happening in the classroom. Granted, there's going to be variation, but if we have certain individualized goals for the children or clusters of goals, we want to be able to see evidence of that work in the classroom, even if the activities might have changed because the children's interests may have changed from one day to the next.
First of all, at the administrative level, they have to gather some data. They have to pull up some information that they can analyze and think about. I think that an administrator would need to develop a system that's comprehensive so that she or he is able to look at all the data in their programs, which would include many times it's the ECRs, the Environment Rating Scale, for the appropriate age groups, child assessment, and any information that you may gather from your parents about how the program is doing.
Annually, we have a self-assessment team. It includes staff, it includes parents, it includes community members, and we look at the program and we share and collaborate, and we look at when we analyze the data. Then we have a large meeting where the community stakeholders and the families come together with staff and look at the data.
Key findings from our assessment data yield sometimes results that show us areas. They guide our thinking in terms of what we need to do to improve. And supporting young dual language learners and looking at our findings from the developmental profiles, from those assessment pieces that I talked about, our observations, the work samples we collect, information from families, sometimes renders results showing that we need to be doing more.
3 times a year we produce a school readiness report, and we look at where the children have moved, where the staff have moved. We think about materials that we might need. We think about different approaches, what kind of training plans we're going to put in place. How are we involving parents? How are we engaging parents? Is it effective? Is it what we need to support the children's development and support the parents in their family goals? So that we do those school readiness reports, and we use them in alignment with looking at our self-assessment of the program as a whole and where are we going to put our energy.